Chapter 1, The Unitive Imperative, Bridging Divides in a Living Cosmos 1.1 Introduction. The fractured lens. We've observed this tapestry, but increasingly, we've focused on individual threads, convinced they exist independently. Modern thought, particularly in the West, has often fostered a fragmented understanding of reality, carving sharp distinctions between domains of knowledge that were once deeply intertwined. We separate the objective facts of science, scientism, from the subjective truths of spirituality, and philosophical inquiry, which often finds itself adrift between the two. Imagine a vast, intricate tapestry, its threads woven together to create a singular, beautiful image. For centuries, humanity has this fragmentation, while leading to immense specialized progress, has also resulted in a profound sense of intellectual and spiritual dis-ease. Conflicts arise between what we know through science and what we believe through faith. Philosophical questions about meaning and purpose can feel unmoored from empirical reality. The search for a coherent worldview that embraces all aspects of human experience remains elusive for many. It is precisely this fractured perception that a genius like Albert Einstein recognized and challenged. His famous dictum, "Science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind," serves as the book's guiding star. This isn't a call for blind faith or unscientific mysticism, rather, it's a profound recognition of mutual dependence. Science, in its rigorous pursuit of verifiable facts and empirical understanding, can become devoid of deeper meaning or purpose without a broader ethical, aesthetic, or spiritual context. Conversely, religion, without the critical inquiry, empirical self-correction, and expanding knowledge provided by science, risks becoming stagnant, dogmatic, or irrelevant to the lived experience of a rapidly evolving world. This book ventures into the heart of this perceived schism, arguing that the deepest insights from science, philosophy, and spirituality are not contradictory but profoundly complementary. Our journey will reveal that the pursuit of truth across these seemingly disparate fields naturally converges towards a unitive consciousness, an awareness of the fundamental interconnectedness of all existence. Our aim is to foster profound new insights that are less divisive and combative, allowing us to glimpse God, ultimate reality, the absolute, source, or a number of other terms used to describe the same things, not as separate entities, but as expressions of an underlying, unified reality. We will explore how new discoveries in physics, the insights of systems thinking, the expansive frameworks of modern philosophy, and contemporary understandings of consciousness all point towards this inherent unity, offering a pathway to a more integrated and meaningful existence. 1.2 Historical Roots of Fragmentation. From unity to divergence. For much of human history, particularly in ancient civilizations and many indigenous cultures, there was no sharp distinction between understanding the natural world, probing existential questions, and engaging with the sacred. Early philosophers were often also keen observers of nature. Spiritual leaders offered comprehensive cosmologies that explained both the physical and the metaphysical realms. Knowledge was largely holistic, seeing patterns and meanings across all domains as interconnected aspects of a single reality. The cosmos, the human spirit, and divine forces were understood as interwoven threads in the fabric of being. The seeds of separation began subtly with intellectual shifts like the Renaissance, which fostered a renewed emphasis on human reason and empirical observation, and the Reformation, which challenged established religious authority and paved the way for more individualistic ways of knowing. However, the most significant catalyst for the intellectual divide we experience today was the scientific revolution and the subsequent Enlightenment period. The scientific revolution, epitomized by figures like Isaac Newton, presented a universe that could be understood as a grand machine, governed by predictable, immutable laws. This paradigm, while incredibly successful in explaining the physical world and driving technological progress, inadvertently contributed to the intellectual divide in several critical ways. Rise of reductionism. The focus shifted intensely to breaking down complex phenomena into their simplest, measurable components. This analytical and reductionist approach, while powerful for scientific investigation, often overlooked the emergent properties and synergistic interconnectedness of larger systems, fostering a worldview where the whole was merely the sum of its parts, rather than something greater. Philosophy's quandary and dualism. Enlightenment philosophers grappled with the implications of this new scientific worldview. René Descartes, for instance, famously solidified a mind-body dualism, creating a conceptual chasm between the inner, subjective world of consciousness, the residential cogitans, and the outer, objective realm of matter, the residential extensa. This philosophical separation reinforced the idea that mind and matter belong to fundamentally different categories, difficult to reconcile. Immanuel Kant further delineated the limits of pure reason, suggesting that ultimate reality, the noumenal world, was unknowable, thereby carving out a domain for faith or subjective experience that lay beyond the reach of scientific inquiry. Religion's retreat or resistance, facing the burgeoning empirical successes of science and the logical rigor of philosophy, established religious institutions often found themselves on the defensive. Some reacted by retreating into increasingly rigid fundamentalism, emphasizing dogma over direct experience or scientific observation. Others found themselves marginalized from the mainstream intellectual discourse, seen as clinging to outdated beliefs in the face of new knowledge. The concept of a god of the gaps emerged, a deity invoked to explain phenomena not yet understood by science. As science explained more, the domain of this gap-filling god steadily shrank. By the 19th and 20th centuries, academic disciplines became highly specialized, fostering a profound sense that truth itself was departmentalized. There was a scientific truth, a philosophical truth, a religious truth, and these were often seen as competing, mutually exclusive, or at best, operating in parallel universes, rather than as complementary facets of a unified reality. This legacy of compartmentalization has profoundly shaped our modern intellectual landscape. 1.3 The contemporary conundrum, consequences of fragmentation. The historical separation of science, philosophy, and religion is not merely an academic footnote, it manifests today in profound societal and individual consequences, creating a pervasive sense of disunity and often leading to unproductive conflict. One of the most visible manifestations is the ongoing culture wars, which frequently pit scientific materialism against religious literalism. Debates around evolution, climate change, artificial intelligence, and bioethics often devolve into ideological battles where each side speaks a different language, convinced of its own exclusive claim to truth. This antagonistic dynamic prevents meaningful dialogue and collaborative problem-solving, replacing inquiry with rigid adherence to preconceived notions. For many individuals, the lack of an integrated worldview leads to a profound spiritual disconnect or an existential void. A purely mechanistic view of the universe, stripped of inherent meaning or purpose, can leave individuals feeling like insignificant accidents in a cold, indifferent cosmos. Conversely, a dogmatic religious view, if it actively resists empirical knowledge or dismisses rational inquiry, can feel increasingly out of sync with the lived experience of a technologically advanced world, leading to intellectual dissonance for its adherents. This fragmentation contributes to widespread existential anxiety, a sense of alienation from both self and world, and difficulty in forming a coherent framework for meaning and value. Furthermore, complex global challenges, from accelerating environmental degradation to persistent social injustice and the quest for lasting peace, demand holistic solutions. When our understanding of reality is fragmented, our approaches to these problems often become equally piecemeal and ineffective. We might address symptoms without understanding root causes, or apply technological fixes without considering the broader ethical, social, or spiritual implications. A shared ethical or philosophical foundation, one that emerges from an integrated understanding of existence, becomes elusive, hindering our collective capacity to navigate an increasingly complex world. It is critical to understand that this pervasive division is not an inherent feature of reality itself, but rather a product of specific historical developments, conceptual frameworks, and modes of inquiry that gained dominance over time. The walls between disciplines are often constructed by human intellect and tradition, not dictated by the fundamental nature of existence. They are mental models that, while once useful for analytical progress, now often impede a deeper, more unified understanding. 1.4 The Beckoning Horizon, Why Unitive Consciousness Matters Now Despite the Historical Divides and Their Ongoing Consequences. A powerful and exhilarating convergence is now emerging from the cutting edge of science, the depths of philosophical inquiry, and the perennial wisdom of spiritual traditions. Paradoxically, the very fields that once contributed to the fragmentation are now providing the most compelling evidence for an underlying unity. This shift signals not the end of specialization, but the dawn of a new era of integration. We are witnessing a profound transformation in science itself. The classical mechanistic worldview, while still useful in certain contexts, is being expanded and enriched by new paradigms. Modern physics, particularly quantum mechanics, reveals a universe of interconnectedness, non-locality, and inherent uncertainty, where observation itself plays a role in shaping reality. Systems theory, a cornerstone of modern biology and ecology, emphasizes the dynamic, relational nature of life, showing how emergent properties arise from complex interactions within the web of life, rather than from isolated parts. These new scientific perspectives reveal a universe that is far more dynamic, participatory, and interwoven than previously imagined. Simultaneously, contemporary philosophy is undergoing a renaissance, moving beyond reductionist or purely linguistic analyses to re-engage with grander metaphysical questions. Philosophers, often informed by scientific developments and drawing from ancient wisdom traditions, are constructing more encompassing frameworks that integrate consciousness, process, and relationship into the very fabric of reality. Concepts like process philosophy offer a worldview where dynamism and change are fundamental, aligning with the fluid nature revealed by modern physics. Parallel to these academic shifts, many spiritual traditions are also experiencing a renewal. Moving beyond rigid dogmas and exclusive claims to truth, there is a growing emphasis on direct experience, the profound interconnectedness of all beings, and a universal understanding of the divine that transcends sectarian boundaries. The increasing prominence of concepts like non-dual awareness and various forms of panentheism are potent examples of this broadening vision. This quest for an integrated understanding is not merely abstract, it finds powerful expression in contemporary theological and philosophical developments. Scholars like Philip Clayton and Arthur Peacock, among others, have pioneered paths that demonstrate how a robust understanding of God's presence can be not only compatible with, but even enriched by, scientific discoveries. Their work, particularly in exploring panentheistic perspectives, offers compelling arguments for a divine reality that is both immanent within the universe, as revealed by science, and transcendent beyond it. This vision moves far beyond the God of the gaps, proposing instead a God deeply interwoven with the very processes and fabric of creation, a reality in whom we live and move and have our being, as articulated by Peacock and Clayton. It is precisely such sophisticated frameworks which embrace the dynamism of the cosmos, the profundity of consciousness, and the longing for ultimate meaning that enable us to bridge historical divides and move towards a genuine unitive consciousness. This brings us to the core principle that will guide our exploration, the both and approach to understanding reality. 1.5 The dance of reality, from classical determinism to quantum interconnectedness. For centuries, the worldview shaped by classical Newtonian physics reigned supreme. It presented a universe as a grand, predictable machine, a collection of discrete particles interacting according to fixed, deterministic laws. If one knew the initial conditions, one could, in theory, predict every future state. This mechanistic understanding yielded immense technological progress and satisfied a profound human desire for order and control. However, as the 20th century dawned, this elegantly simple model began to fray at its edges when physicists probed the very small and the very fast. The revolution of quantum mechanics shattered the comfortable certainties of classical determinism, unveiling a universe far more mysterious, probabilistic, and interconnected than previously imagined. At the subatomic level, particles do not behave as solid, isolated billiard balls. Instead, they exhibit wave-particle duality, existing as probabilities rather than fixed positions. Phenomena like non-locality, where particles appear to influence each other instantaneously across vast distances, and entanglement, where two particles remain linked, no matter how far apart, such that measuring one instantly affects the other, defied all classical intuition. Furthermore, the observer effect suggested that the act of measurement itself influenced the state of the quantum system, blurring the line between observer and observed. These insights present a profound challenge to a purely reductionist or materialistic worldview. If the most fundamental constituents of reality are not fixed, separate entities but interconnected, probabilistic events, then our understanding of reality must fundamentally shift. This is where the visionary ideas of physicists like David Bohm become indispensable. Bohm proposed the concept of the implicate order, a deeper, undivided, underlying reality from which the manifest, observable world, or the explicate order, unfolds. Think of a hologram, every part contains information about the whole. Similarly, in Bohm's view, the implicate order is the seamless, multidimensional totality, and the explicate order is the fragmented, three-dimensional reality we perceive. Bohm's model offers a powerful metaphor for our both-and reality. It reconciles the apparent opposition between the chaotic, probabilistic quantum world and the stable, observable classical world. The classical world of distinct objects and predictable interactions is not an illusion, but an unfolded, explicate aspect of a deeper, undivided quantum reality. This perspective allows us to embrace both the deterministic patterns we observe in large-scale phenomena and the inherent interconnectedness and probabilistic nature at the quantum level, recognizing them as complementary aspects of a single, flowing whole. 1.6 Beyond fixed substances, process metaphysics and a dynamic universe. Traditional metaphysics, for much of Western history, has been preoccupied with the notion of substance, fixed, unchanging essences underlying reality. Whether it was Plato's eternal forms or Descartes' enduring substances, the emphasis was often on what is permanent and static, rather than what is becoming and dynamic. However, just as quantum physics challenged the static view of matter, process metaphysics offers a philosophical framework that aligns with a dynamic, interconnected universe. Process philosophy, rooted deeply in the work of Alfred North Whitehead, who will be explored further in later chapters, posits that reality is not fundamentally composed of static things but of dynamic events or processes. Everything is in a state of becoming, constantly influenced by and influencing everything else. Rather than existing independently, entities are fundamentally relational, defined by their interactions and their role in the ongoing flow of the cosmos. Creativity is not just a human attribute, but a foundational principle of the universe itself, the ongoing capacity for novel actualization within the web of becoming. The work of Joseph A. Bracken, particularly in The Divine Matrix, provides a compelling contemporary articulation of process metaphysics, highlighting its capacity to bridge diverse philosophical and spiritual traditions. Bracken explores how process thought offers a dynamic understanding of reality that resonates with both Western scientific insights and Eastern mystical traditions, such as Buddhist interdependence. He emphasizes how creativity serves as a crucial link, showing a shared dynamism between the divine and the unfolding universe. The divine matrix becomes a metaphor for this interconnected, creative ground of being, where individual actual occasions or events are not isolated but emerge from and contribute to a larger, relational whole. This process-oriented view exemplifies the both-and principle. It reconciles the apparent opposition between a static, unchanging ultimate reality and a constantly evolving, active world. It allows us to understand the universe as both orderly and spontaneous, both structured and creative. By viewing reality as fundamentally relational and processual, we gain a metaphysical lens that sees connections where traditional thought saw separation, thereby laying a crucial philosophical groundwork for a more integrated understanding of existence. 1.7 The living cosmos, panpsychism, Gaia, and an animated universe. Building upon the insights of quantum interconnectedness and process metaphysics, we can now venture into an even more profound understanding of the universe, that it is not merely a collection of inert matter and passive forces, but in some fundamental sense, alive and animated. This challenges the entrenched Western notion of a dead, mechanical cosmos, opening the door to a truly unitive perspective where mind and matter are not separate entities, but interwoven aspects of a vibrant, conscious whole. One of the most compelling concepts in this regard is panpsychism, the philosophical view that consciousness, or at least proto-consciousness, a rudimentary form of mind or experience, is a fundamental and ubiquitous property of reality. Rather than consciousness being an emergent phenomenon confined to complex brains, panpsychism suggests it is present, in varying degrees of sophistication, throughout the universe, down to its most basic constituents. This perspective directly addresses the hard problem of consciousness by positing that consciousness is inherent in matter, not something mysteriously added to it. It resonates with the quantum realm where observation itself seems to play a role in shaping reality, and aligns with process philosophy's emphasis on inherent responsiveness and experience at all levels of becoming. As Thomas Brophy eloquently argues in The Mechanism Demands a Metamechanism, the intricate complexity, order, and apparent fine-tuning of the universe cannot be adequately explained by a purely dead or accidental mechanism. Brophy posits that the cosmos itself hints at an underlying metamechanism or intrinsic organizing intelligence, suggesting an inherent aliveness or consciousness that directs its evolution. His work, delving into deep principles of cosmic organization, reinforces the idea that the universe is not a collection of random parts, but a system that actively creates and organizes itself, indicative of an intrinsic, living intelligence. On a grander scale, the Gaia hypothesis, developed by James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis, offers a powerful macro-level expression of this living universe. Gaia proposes that Earth's living organisms, interacting with their inorganic surroundings, atmosphere, oceans, soil, form a single, self-regulating, complex system that actively maintains and perpetuates the conditions for life on the planet. This isn't just a metaphor, it suggests a planetary-scale superorganism exhibiting emergent properties of self-regulation and homeostasis. Gaia embodies the both-and principle. Earth is both a collection of individual species and geological features and a unified, living system. It powerfully blurs the lines between living and non-living, organism and environment, demonstrating how the whole is indeed greater than the sum of its parts. Tracing back to ancient philosophies, Hylozoism, from the Greek hyle for matter and zoe for life, posits that all matter is, in some sense, alive or animated, possessing an inherent vitality or sentience. This philosophical doctrine provides a direct counterpoint to the notion of matter as inert, passive, and devoid of intrinsic life. It reflects an intuitive understanding, often found in indigenous traditions, that the world around us, rocks, rivers, mountains, possesses a spirit or a living quality. In a modern context, Hylozoism, when coupled with panpsychism, offers a compelling framework for a universe where life and consciousness are not rare accidents, but pervasive potentials or expressions of its fundamental nature. Collectively, panpsychism, the Gaia hypothesis, and Hylozoism strengthen the argument for an interwoven cosmos that is fundamentally alive. They embody the both-and principle by reconciling matter with mind, mechanism with life, and parts with the whole. This holistic view of an animated, conscious, and self-regulating universe moves us decisively away from divisive thinking, where mind and matter are at odds, towards a truly unified perspective where existence is understood as a vibrant, interconnected dance of consciousness and form. 1.8 The ground of all being, a relational understanding of ultimate reality. As our scientific and metaphysical understanding shifts towards dynamism, interconnectedness, and inherent aliveness, so too must our conception of ultimate reality, that which we call God, Source, the Absolute, or the ground of all being. The both-and principle offers a powerful way to transcend the rigid dichotomy between a purely transcendent, distant God and an exclusively immanent, all-encompassing divine. Paul Tillich's profound concept of the ground of all being is pivotal here. Tillich argued that God is not a being among other beings, nor an external entity existing up there or out there. Instead, God is the very power of being that enables everything to exist, the depth and inexhaustibility of reality itself. This ground is immanent within all things, the creative force that gives rise to and sustains existence, yet simultaneously transcends any particular manifestation or form. It is the infinite within the finite, the eternal in the temporal. This understanding provides a sophisticated metaphysical both-and that bridges elements of classical theism, emphasizing God's transcendence and distinctness, and pantheism, identifying God purely with the immanent universe. It moves towards a panentheistic understanding, where ultimate reality is in everything and everything is in ultimate reality, without being exhausted by it. The universe is contained within God, yet God is more than the universe. This perspective aligns beautifully with the dynamism of process thought, the interconnectedness of quantum physics, and the aliveness of the cosmos, envisioning ultimate reality not as a static, external deity, but as a pervasive, dynamic presence that is both the source and the living matrix of all existence. Extending this both-and principle, we realize that no man or academic is an island. The perceived war between science and religion, or between different philosophical schools, is, to a large extent, an illusory conflict, a product of divisive, either-or thinking rather than an inherent opposition in the nature of reality or truth. The ongoing debates about God, science, and religion have often been unproductive precisely because they operate from a framework of antagonism rather than potential synergy. When we adopt a holistic perspective, we recognize that disciplines like physics, biology, philosophy, theology, and spiritual insight are not isolated silos. Instead, they represent different, complementary ways of apprehending reality, each enriching the other when viewed through the lens of fundamental interconnectedness. Our goal is not to prove one field superior to another, but to demonstrate their profound mutual dependence and their collective capacity to illuminate a more complete truth. 1.9 Paving the way for unified evolution, spirit and cosmos in dialogue. One of the most persistent and emotionally charged battlegrounds in the perceived war between science and religion has been the concept of evolution. For many, Darwinian evolutionary theory, with its emphasis on natural selection and random mutation, has appeared diametrically opposed to theological narratives of creation and divine purpose. This either-or framing has often led to deep ideological rifts, obscuring the significant areas of convergence and sophisticated attempts at reconciliation. However, this apparent opposition, too, can be effectively resolved through the both-and principle. It is crucial to recognize that evolutionary thinking is far from monolithic. There are numerous theories and models of evolution, and many are indeed capable of rich dialogue with theological insight. The common public perception often defaults to a simplified, indeed outmoded, Darwinian model as the sole standard for scientific evolution, leading to unnecessary conflict with theological ideas. In fact, many contemporary theologians and scientists have formulated compelling ways to reconcile evolutionary thought with faith. Concepts like evolutionary creationism, which affirms God as the creator who uses evolution as the mechanism, or theistic evolution models represent sophisticated efforts to integrate scientific discovery with religious belief. These models move beyond the false dichotomy, demonstrating that the grandeur of creation is only magnified by understanding its intricate evolutionary unfolding. This approach finds eloquent expression in the work of figures like former NASA scientist Mark S. Wharton, whose Peril in Paradise, Theology, Science, and the Age of the Earth bravely tackles historical misinterpretations that fuel the conflict. Even more profoundly, the Jesuit priest-scientist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, with his vision of a cosmic Christ cosmology and the Omega Point, proposed a spiritual evolution that transcends mere biological processes, envisioning a universe moving towards increasing complexity, consciousness, and ultimately, union with the divine. His work, alongside thinkers like Whitehead as explored by Bruce G. Epperly in The God of Tomorrow, offers a powerful both an integration of cosmology, science, metaphysics, and mysticism. This comprehensive first chapter has laid the groundwork by demonstrating that the universe is inherently interwoven, animated, and that a both-and approach allows us to resolve apparent contradictions. In the next chapter, we will delve deeper into the fascinating dialogue between evolutionary science and theology, revealing how the very process of life's unfolding can be understood not as a threat to spiritual insight, but as its profound affirmation within a panentheistic framework.